Hello, and welcome to Audience, a writer's ultimate power tool. It doesn't matter whether you're writing to argue, persuade, inform, or connect. Learning to really know your audience and building that audience awareness into your writing, basically structuring what you say around your understanding of your audience's needs, values, and beliefs, is the fastest and most effective way to improve your writing. And most people who struggle with writing will agree that it also makes the task less painful. As you know, audience is an important element of the rhetorical situation. Rhetorical situation refers to any set of circumstances that causes you to use some sort of communication to modify the perspective of someone else. The better you can define your rhetorical situation, the more manageable the task of communication will be. For the purpose of better defining our rhetorical situation, we're going to take audience awareness to the next level by refining our sense of audience and transforming it into a tool. As we do this, it's helpful to distinguish between a general readership and a focused audience. When faced with a writing or communication task, a lot of us tend to define audience very broadly as the general readership. We ask ourselves who all might read and benefit from this. And when you're aiming your writing at anyone who might be interested in this, that's not defining your rhetorical situation very well and in a way that can help you focus in your writing. When your sense of readership is that general, the only thing that you can really do is focus on the topic. And basically, what you end up trying to do is cover it all. By instead using this idea of a hyper-focused intended audience, you'll now be asking, whom am I picturing in order to make my task easier and keep myself focused? And as you can imagine, this encourages you to focus on communicating with that hyper-focused intended audience, and it makes your task easier. You may be concerned thinking that focusing in on a very tight audience will make it so that a larger readership is ignored and won't understand your piece. But perhaps counterintuitively, focusing in on a small audience helps make your writing and communication be understood by more people because it's more focused and it communicates better. And we can even refine or sharpen our audience tool by focusing in even tighter than a small, hyper focused intended audience. We can even focus in on an audience of one. And here, no, I'm not talking about your instructor. Focusing, I think, on your instructor in these writing tasks just makes your project more stressful and difficult and less effective. But John Steinbeck, American author, has said, your audience is one single reader. I have found that sometimes it helps to pick out one person, a real person you know or an imagined person, and write to that one. And you actually already tried this on with assignment one when you were writing to convince your former self to change their opinion. And in fact, you'll be trying it again with assignment two. Here's an example. If you were thinking about your rhetorical situation and you simply say, I'm writing against dairy subsidies, that's not going to get you very far. Sure, it covers the writer, the author, and the topic part of the rhetorical situation, but it doesn't give you a good sense of audience, or it implies a very general sense of audience. And as we talked about before, the broader or more general your sense of audience is, the more your focus turns to the topic. And you can picture this statement, I'm writing against dairy subsidies, leading to you beginning to just pour and stuff all of the information and facts and reasons that you can find into your piece of writing. And since you can't cover it all and do it well, it's important to refine and further define, more fully define your rhetorical situation in order to create an effective piece of communication. So here's a second situation or a second um, statement of rhetorical situation. I'm writing against dairy subsidies and using a person, an unstated person I know as my audience of one. She came from a lower middle class home. Her father was a hardworking lobster fisherman, and her mother was an astute social climber. She grew up in the 50s and 60s and flourished under the rise of disposable technology. Her husband did well in the tech industry and the growth of manufacturing and consumerism. She is socially and financially conservative. She's not particularly interested in current events or tuned into the idea of social or environmental justice. She has a good amount of money and likes to buy things and loves good food. She is a caring grandmother and has a good sense of humor. And I hope you can see how immediately creating such a detailed audience profile moves your focus from the topic to the act of communication. You're now picturing this person and you're starting to think about what the most effective reasons and methods would be to accomplish your goals. And obviously, this is not a complete top to bottom profile of this person. I've selected details that seem relevant given the topic at hand. And so just as in assignment one, you used everything you knew about your former self to put forth the best, most convincing argument. The more you know about the values and reasons and culture of your focused audience, the better you can identify the most convincing reason for belief. As we were already said, you can't cover it all and do it well. So it's important to deliberately choose the reasons and methods that you're going to employ in your piece of written communication. So just to continue with this example, I want to argue the need that we need to eliminate dairy subsidies. And I know from reading around that there are lots of reasons to do this, or I believe this. There's the environmental impacts, there's the animal rights angle, and the human rights angle, just to name a few. But there are so many sub elements and sub reasons in each of these larger reasons that you can imagine stuffing them all into one essay won't work well. Might work well for a book or a series of books, but it's not going to work well for your argument. You just can't cover it all and do it well. It's important, however, in selecting your reasons and your approach that you not choose what you think is the most compelling reason. For example, for me, the most compelling reason might be animal rights related, but knowing what I know about my audience of one, that's not going to be the most compelling reason for belief. That's not going to convince her that we need to eliminate dairy subsidies. Sure, she might actually be impacted by the environmental approach. She's a grandmother and loves her grandkids. And if you can make the connection between um, the environmental impacts of the dairy subsidies and dairy industry and the future for her grandchildren, that might be effective. But I think I might instead choose to narrow it down to the human element and explore what's happening to the small dairy farmer. This would begin with her connection to that dairy farmer based on her father, who was a hardworking lobster fisherman who, long hours, long weeks was out for um, out at sea. So I might find that to be the most effective approach. In either case, the point here is that the more informed you are about your audience, and the more you can understand their beliefs and step into their shoes, the better you can select the reasons and methods that will be effective and convincing. And then, having really thought through the most effective paths that I might take to achieve my goal of arguing that we need to eliminate dairy subsidies, I might return to my audience profile and refine that, sharpen it further, talking about common ground. So we've talked about common ground before, talked about building bridges between our audience and ourselves, creating that shared frame that we can start from in order to make progress and to make them receptive to what we're about to say. And so I can think through the situation and add into my audience tool, my audience profile, what I see to be some of the important common ground here between me and my audience. We both care about people's health, physical, mental, and economic, and we both care about workers' rights. And so you can see that even acknowledging in the audience profile that common ground is going to get you a lot further in terms of, how do you open up this discussion? What are the appeals? What are the things that you have in common? What is your shared frame? And all of this you're going to work on in assignment too. So feel free to return to this presentation. But the bottom line is this: audience is everything. And you can use this idea of an audience of one to help you develop a detailed understanding of your rhetorical situation. And this will in turn lead to a more effective piece of communication. Thanks for listening.